Let's talk to Maggie Oliver now, though, very quickly, before we speak to William Clouston. She's been involved in an extensive inquiry by the Daily Express and their chief crime reporter as well, looking at the Metropolitan Police cases against grooming gangs in London. And let's find out what she's found out. Maggie, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Very good to see you. Another great project that you've got yourself involved in here. Mayor accused over grooming gangs cover-up here in London. As you said before, Susan Hall has been great at trying to get the truth out of Sadiq Khan, but he keeps kind of avoiding any answers, doesn't he? What have you found out?
Yeah, I mean, I find him typical, the latest in a long line of public servants who will lie through their teeth and cover up the truth in order to protect the organisation. I've got the greatest respect for Susan, who would not let Sadiq Khan off the hook, and then to Zach and Callum, who went out and did a deep dive into what, let me make it clear, they have only been able to look at what is already in the public arena. But even with looking at that, it's very clear that Sadiq Khan was using smoke and mirrors to conceal what he must know is really going on in London. And this is just the latest in a long line, Mike, of different towns and cities where the authorities have tried to conceal the truth until it was very clear that it was going to be impossible to cover it up any longer. I think what's also interesting in this is that it was only after Zach and Callum gave Sadiq Khan and the Met, actually, a right of reply that they finally acknowledged that there is a problem, and that was 24 hours after the deadline for their right to reply. So my involvement in this was looking at the cases that Zach and Callum had uncovered and looking at them with my experience and assessing whether I felt that they are a similar pattern that we've seen in Rochdale, in Rotherham, in Telford, in Huddersfield, Keighley, and in my opinion, several of those cases absolutely were.
Yeah. So do you think it's a cover-up as well?
Yeah, 100%. You know, it took me 10 years to get GMP to acknowledge that Rochdale had been borderline incompetence. You know, it took 20 years to get the cover-up in Manchester reinvestigated. We've seen the same in Rotherham, and we've seen the same all through the country. And it is like a pack of cards, Mike. I think that people power and shows like you and other media people who have kept the spotlight on it is the only reason that we are, you know, the whole country knows really what's gone on. I would take this further, though, and I would bring into it this new so-called national inquiry. You'll remember that Keir Starmer, when Donald Trump attacked Sadiq Khan, Keir Starmer said that, you know, Sadiq Khan was a very good friend of his. You know, you look at the new national inquiry and I see what's going on behind the scenes, that there is no attempt to uncover the truth there. They're trying to water down this new inquiry. They can't get a judge to chair it. They're not deciding which areas are going to be involved. You know, getting to the truth in these matters is critical to prevent other children being failed in the way that generations of children have been in the last 20 or 30 years. And that's really why I carry on. It is the lives of the past that have been irreversibly damaged. I'm trying to prevent it continuing for the next generations. So I have no trust in public officials who are insistent on protecting their own reputations and covering up the truth. But it's not going to go away, Mike, now. You know, the cat's out of the bag, and this is the latest in a long line of other cover-ups, I would say.
Yes, indeed. Maggie, great to speak to you, and great work again from you. Thank you very much indeed, and from the Daily Express. Maggie Oliver, their former Detective Constable, Greater Manchester Police. The Mayor's office have said this to us. The Mayor has always been clear that the safety of Londoners is his top priority, and nowhere is this truer than in safeguarding children. Well, William Clouston's here. Maggie Oliver calls it a cover-up. I think I'd go with her opinion, wouldn't you?
Well, she's the expert.
Yeah.
And she says it exhibits exactly the same pattern as what she saw in the north of Manchester and everywhere else. And it's interesting, isn't it? Sadiq Khan is on record as saying there's no indication that they exist.
Yeah.
And yet we have reports of girls being raped in hotels. Mark Rownley says there's a steady flow of reports.
Yeah.
So I think he's in denial, and a lot of people say
I think so.
It's the tip of the iceberg, but there's a broader problem here. Public trust in political institutions can go right down to 9%. You know, 9 out of 10 people in the country do not trust the institutions.
Yeah.
And you have to ask why. One of the reasons is things like the grooming gangs cover-up. If you're in Rotherham and you saw this, you saw what happened,
right.
The reaction of the authorities and the politicians was to try and pretend it wasn't there for the sake of diversity or other aims. They just put it undercover. That's worse. That's worse than facing up to it and actually dealing with it. Facing up to it requires some courage. You have to challenge certain people who are trying to, you know, protect interests. But I promise you, it's easy. It's better for the public and for our society if we just face up to this and deal with it.
Sure.
You don't want a mayor that says there's no indication when he knows there is.
Yeah. And Maggie says to me, whenever I speak to her, we didn't have time to get into it this time, but, you know, it's still going on. In a lot of towns in the north, you know, Manchester, in Rochdale, in Bury, in parts of Bradford, you know, and she says not only is it endemic and part of the sort of the culture, and I don't mean just of the Muslim community, but it's part of the culture of the political class, and even the police. I mean, we now know that police officers individually were actually involved in not just complicitly, you know, keeping it quiet, but actually involved in some of the sexual assaults. Yeah,
no, it's shocking, absolutely shocking. I was, when Dave Bentley ran in South Yorkshire Mayor, we met Jane Senior, who again is a bit like Maggie, is a whistleblower, and I think you've interviewed Jane. Yeah. And I was shocked, actually, after all we've been through, after the reports on what happened in Rotherham, Jane said to us, it's as bad now as it's ever been. Right. And I couldn't believe that. And
many of the perpetrators who have, if they have gone to prison, have come out and have just carried on.
Of course, yeah.
You know,
no, it's shocking. I mean,
nothing changes. Well, let's have a look at this. This is Susan Hall quizzing Sadiq Khan, and this is his typical attitude to what happens when he's asked the question.
I asked you this question last week, and you found every which way but not to answer it. Just how many grooming gangs have we got in London?
To avoid any misunderstanding, can she define what she means by that?
Yes, if you look at what's gone on in Rotherham, where there are people taking young girls, grooming them for sex, that is what I'm talking about.
We know in London there are issues about exploitation of young people, but they're not as defined by the member in her definition of what those types of gangs are.
So are you saying we haven't got the same sort of gangs that are in Rotherham, Bradford and lots of other places in the country?
Just for you misunderstanding, what does she mean by that?
You know full well what I mean by that. It's all over the television. You know exactly what I mean by that. These gangs of people that are grooming young girls for sex. Do we actually have those in London?
I'm unclear, Chair, what is meant by the question. If you could spell it out, I can answer.
I've just spelt it out. Are you not listening? It's the sort of gangs that groom young girls at a young age for sex. Exactly how much clearer do you want me to be?
I mean, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
He's in complete denial there.
Yeah.
That is like watching some sort of Soviet Iron Curtain response.
It really is.
And it's like he knows that we know that he's filibustering and just blocking this.
And he's also trying to sort of lure her into, because he thinks it will make her look wrong, to say Pakistani grooming gangs.
And he wants
her to say it.
He wants to back her. He wants to get her to retreat. Yeah. This is how the system works. Right. There's a brilliant book called The Tribe, written by Ben Cobley a few years ago. It's called The Liberal Left System of Diversity. And what it's about is power. And what you saw there is power being exercised. Right. What he wanted to do was to go on the offensive there, and he wanted Susan Hall to just back off and do that. I'm sorry. If it's happening, we need to get onto it, and it's his responsibility to get on.
According to Daily Express, it is happening. Yeah. And it's not, you know, nobody's blaming Sadiq Khan for it happening, but why can't he just acknowledge that it's happening and then do something about it? I mean, the same with Keir Starmer. You can tell that he's dragging his heels on this whole thing. The inquiry hasn't yet been set up. They haven't yet got its terms of reference sorted out. They can't find a judge, apparently, who wants to do it, which I find staggering. You know, surely they can find somebody to chair a panel on what's going on.
Well, I'll ask you a question. You asked me the questions, but do you think that such an inquiry is going to be embarrassing to the Labour
of course it is.
That presided over it?
Absolutely it will be, because all of the places where it happened in the north of England were Labour-supported areas and Labour-run councils. Right. And many of those councillors were involved, unfortunately, in what was going on.
I know. And
if they weren't involved, they were family members of those people who were involved.
Or covering it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Absolutely.
that's why they're dragging their heels. Yeah. Anyway,
have a look at this. This is Keir Starmer when Sadiq Khan gets mentioned by Donald Trump when they were at Turnberry together.
I'm not a fan of your mayor.
Why not?
I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London. But a nasty person. I think he's done. I think
he's a friend of mine, right?
No, I think he's done a terrible job. But I would certainly visit London. Yeah. Well, I like Nigel. I mean, Nigel, as you know, is a friend of mine. Nigel's done very well. He's a friend of mine.
I'd sort of forgotten about how cringeworthy that was for Starmer, who was again sitting there being humiliated and keeps going back for more, doesn't he? And of course, you should be careful when Keir Starmer calls you his friend, because he called Jeremy Corbyn his friend once, and then later on, he was never my friend.
well, very little of what he says matters or means anything at all. It's a very low truth value.
It is very low. I mean, I was looking earlier at his first tweet of the day, which we always do here on a daily basis if we can, and I have to say, it's just as useless and nebulous as all of his other tweets that he puts out. And in the midst of all the scandal that's going on around the China story, the other problem with the football match in Birmingham, he's put out this: I'm committed to giving equal opportunity for young people across our country. Today we're announcing plans for V levels, new vocational qualifications to upskill students in jobs for the future. That's national renewal.
It's interesting.
No, it isn't.
I'd wondered actually with his, do you think he does his tweets or is it generative AI? I mean, some of them are so platitudinous.
I'm sure he doesn't do them by himself.
Obviously he doesn't do it himself, but they are so, the team that are doing them are just generating slop. It's just
and it's never relevant to whatever the conversation is about the day. Like, Prince Andrew's on the front pages. We've still got, I mean, the story which we picked up a bit earlier is about something to do with migrants coming into Europe. Russian spies and hard-left humanitarian groups are working with people smugglers to flood Europe with illegal migrants. It's coming from a Bulgarian interior minister. I mean, that's a pretty serious charge, isn't it?
Very serious, but it's not. What they'll say is that it's about cooperation with our European partners and all this sort of thing. But I've always said that any competent nation state can get a handle of its borders if it wants to. But it has to be a competent nation state. You just have to take responsibility yourself. And
we are definitely very short of being a competent nation state.
Absolutely,
aren't we?
It's state failure all the way. And Mahmood is saying that she's sending a warning. Well, the warning that she sends is that you've got about 1 in 1,000 chance of going back to France. That's the warning.
She's also had to be community noted this weekend by saying that, we've deported 35,000 people. And according to Twitter, quite rightly, they've only really sort of deported against their will 9,000 people, because the others all went voluntarily. And they also all went in November of last year, nearly a year ago. Nothing to do with her.
No, there's no sign of this being done. I mean, she says she'll do whatever it takes. That's the rhetoric. But there's nothing going on here. I mean, this will just drag the Labour Party down. I think it
will.
I've said before
it's got worse under them as well.
More vulnerable than the Tories even.
I don't think there's any doubt. What do you make of their plan to possibly postpone once again these local elections? Because, this is another, I would say, anti-democratic manoeuvre, because everybody knows why they're doing it. They did it last time not because they weren't ready or because it was too complicated. It was because they didn't want to lose them.
It's shocking.
And now they're talking about postponing them for another year.
I think it's an absolute disgrace. I mean, to be fair, Mike,
how can they do that?
In the pandemic, there were delays to the normal democratic process. Most people understood that. When there's a lockdown, it's very difficult to organise it. There's no excuse, absolutely no excuse, and they will be absolutely hammered. We're the target seats we have. We think seats that had big city council seats that had 60% of people voting Labour. We're looking at our returns coming in at about 25%, less than half. It's a collapse. And then they've got the Greens snapping at them. So Labour is in a particularly vulnerable position in these elections. They'll do terribly.
Well, they are, because not only are they hated as a general party because of what they're doing in government, but they've got, as you say, they've got the Greens sort of snapping at their left heel, and then they've got your party snapping at their left heel as well, which will lose them votes, won't they? Because the left side of the party don't really like Starmer very much.
No, they don't. And then you've got the question, the speculation as to who is going to replace him. I think you're probably right that there's no way the May elections aren't going to be disastrous for him. He'll be under pressure, and he may. I think by June, July, you could have a Labour Party that would move against him. But it's very difficult. The talent pool is not big.
No.
And you look at who else could come up. And it's actually scary.
It really is.
You know,
I mean, Bridget Phillipson, goodness gracious me, as the deputy leader. I mean, luckily, I think she's going to get beaten by Lucy Powell. But you know, she ain't any better either.
No. It's very serious for the country. You know, I think there are. I mean, there's even talk of Miliband.
I know.
I mean,
well, he's very popular apparently in the Labour Party.
He's very
staggering.
Popular. Yeah, I know. And but then I was chatting to a Labour insider I know, and he said, well, because I was talking about Burnham, I said, you know, and he said, no chance at all. Not particularly well liked in the PLP, not particularly well liked in the wider party. And then you've got Miliband, who I said, you know, has trouble with reality. I didn't say that, but he said, yeah, but the party is like that. So it actually matches. So, you know, he's actually very, very popular. If you look at the websites that track it, he is very popular.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
He and Angela Rayner were the two kind of highest-ranking members of the parliamentary party who would be most likely to be Prime Minister.
Yeah.